Hello and welcome to the 7th in line webinar on PCI DSS, and today's topic is something different, something new, non-technical based at all in some level that is. And again, I thank every one of you for turning up at this hour for this webinar, and as always we are running a full house. Matter of fact, we are considering even changing our plan with GoToWebinar to support the number of participants. So I sincerely thank you for the encouragement that you have shown over the times. And today's topic, as you're aware, would be targeted attacks on your CDE, social engineering, and spear phishing. So a long topic. CDE, again, for those who are not aware, would be card data environment. So targeted attack on your card data environment. Why card data environment? We'll get into it. Okay, a brief about me before we go. I'm sure that most of you already know me or have attended our past webinars. So, okay, just in brief, this is me, Narendra Sahu. I run my company, Vista InfoSec, and I've had a few certifications, PCI, QSAs, CISPA, CISOs, CISA, and stuff. And I've been in the IT field and information security since almost like 25 years now. And so starting up directly, we'll be doing this in two parts. One is social engineering, and the next would be the subset, which is phishing, the spear phishing. So social engineering, the clever manipulation of the natural human tendency to trust. I really wouldn't, that's the dictionary definition, but I would like to call it the natural human naivety to trust, or taking shortcuts, as I always say. Well, cyber attacks are dominating the news wherever you go. I don't think I need to flash more statistics with you, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere, and the number one target, as always, are the financial services. And again, you don't get a prize for guessing why. Why do you think financial services are a major target? Simply speaking, it is follow the money. So financial services, money, target, financial services. So that's about it. Again, in the last 6 months, there has been a phenomenal amount of attacks across the world. Quite a few are there, quite a few. The security threat, again, ranges from national intelligence to hackers. National intelligence, somebody like a, like a India, Pakistan sort of a thing. And again, a hacker, again, you can be hacked. All these would need a hacker at some level or the other, but there are hackers in the dark web and deep web who do it just for the thrill, for the challenge that, okay, we hacked this site. So it's like limelight sites. More often than not, it's the industrial espionage that we get to see everywhere. Industrial espionage goes everywhere. So that's where the problem lies. There are, of course, organized crime and insider threats and stuff, terrorist information warfare, but the prime issue always becomes industrial espionage. Well, if you are looking at, okay, who could be your threat, basically you need to ask a question, that is, who thinks you are important or interesting? So if you think you don't fall under the category of industrial espionage, then you need to ask, who thinks you are important? And I'm sure there are many thinking important. So you'll have to check whether it is your competitors, suppliers, customers, investors, critics, regulators, or hackers. So anyone could be a threat for you. Now, how is it done? Now, it's not really the James Bond style. What people typically think is that, okay, everybody is well trained and they can get anything they want. They can just look at it like the, like the Medusa look or something, and take over the system. And and you would need billions of dollars to figure out how to stop them, or rather, the hackers will be using billions of dollars worth of equipments, like an Aston Martin, programmed Aston Martin, so to say. But the reality is something totally different. They're not really, most of them are not really technically brilliant, so to say. They just abuse human nature. They know that people would like to trust and move ahead in life, and that's what gets used up, unfortunately. Well, the reason being, there are no technology to take care of humans. So on the periphery there is, but if somebody is really bent on it, then they can bypass almost everything. Why I use the terminology SE, which simply means social engineering. So why is it so effective? Well, everybody, most of our clients, everywhere that we see, everybody is focused on technical security and protection of physical assets. So a VA, PT, or stuff like that becomes like the top-notch priority for most company nowadays. Some would get into developing, like a policy, procedure, and stuff, but very few, even in our contracts, we see very few are really focused on getting their employees trained. And again, security is as strong as the weakest link, and people are your weakest link. And see, the whole point is that there is a plethora of technologies to protect from, data, sensitive information from the technical side. So think about it. If you're a hacker and you're, it's much more easier to fool a people, human beings, rather than trying to bypass web application firewalls, IDS, IPS, SIEMs, and stuff. So that's where the people being the weakest link, software, the social engineering becomes so very effective. And again, it's extremely hard to detect since there is no intrusion detection system for lack of common sense. So if you've got a stupid system sitting in your system, there will be literally no way that the technical or technology can check and do something about it. With the traditional perpetrators, the everyday thing, you have like petty criminals who do things, the organized crime, who again could be cross-border terrorism as well, and again governments doing what they do best, that is being a big brother. So moving ahead, the targets, but what we always see is that the targets and the modus operandi MO, that is how it is done, evolves with the as time goes. So now attackers follow your data into the cloud. So it's no longer your in-house data center and how it moves, but it's also what is hosted on the cloud. And again, we have developing countries and mid-tier banks who do not have either the money or the budgets or the technology or even the vision. That's what is the major challenge in developing companies and mid-tier banks. So as a nationalized state-level bank, of course, would have $1 billion budget and all these things, but for a smaller company who would not even have a few $1 million to spare for InfoSec, that becomes a prime target. Mobile platform vulnerabilities. Nowadays, almost all the banks and financial institutions are releasing mobile applications, and in all the assessments that we've seen, most of them, the applications written are worse than college projects. That's what I tell them, worse than college projects. So you can even reverse engineer the code, and you can get to see the password stored in the code in itself, which you can then use to exploit something else. Of course, the users don't help. Even if you have all the technology and the vulnerability assessments done, the users don't help. Most of the cyber espionage falls for people. Look at it. 85% of the cyber attacks would be unsuccessful if IT staff had taken basic steps. Basic steps, most 85% of cyber attacks would be unsuccessful. Look at this, 50% of end users have taken data from their company when they are exiting in a good or bad note, whichever. And an astounding 69% of former employees can still access their systems even though they are not on board the system yet. And 28% of passwords, that is literally almost 1/3 of the passwords, can be broken within 15 seconds. That's about it. So 1 in 3 passwords can be broken within 15 seconds. Then what are the traditional objectives? Making a point for these hackers, making a point becomes a major thing. Making money and supporting geopolitical conflict. That's what we see in India. Indians hacking the Pakistani websites, government website, and those hacking our government websites. Both not having, rather, okay, India has something to a very high extent, but still not really enough. And of course, pursuing national intelligence objectives like we've seen happening, Russia, China, India, and stuff. The cross-border intelligence hacking continues. Making money. What's the best way to make money? Of course, the credit cards. You don't really go barging into a bank with your guns blazing. Those days are gone by. Believe the kid, it's all gone, it's over. Now it is steal the credit cards. Personal data theft is a privacy. Sorry. The personal data theft, again, data privacy becomes an issue. Ransom and extortion. Okay, any guesses? What is this speaking about? Ransom and extortion. What do you do? Hold your what? Child as a game? How does it mean? How does it work? Sorry, just got a bit of a cough. So, any people who can pitch in as to what do I mean by ransom and extortion? Okay, got a few answers over here. You can type in the chat window. Okay. Well, many have guessed it right. It's ransomware. Yes, you're right. It's ransomware. Banking details. Set up a phishing site and set up a banking details, and you're good to go. Market manipulation, which could be stock trading, insider trading, and of course cyber fraud. Now, what can you expect? Going ahead, you can expect attacks on banking systems going up through the roof. And the point of sale attack on credit cards also rising as the day goes by. Attacks on banking targets would always be the #1 issue that would be coming up over the horizon for us, which is something that we need to look at. Of course, color targets are there, more obvious and lucrative thanks to the Internet of Things that is rising. But the attack on banking systems will never cease. It will always stay #1. Now, with the tokenization of credit cards, perhaps credit card hacks, credit card phishing may decrease, but banking systems will always be the prime targets. Looking at attacks, the #1 thing would always be ransomware. It's easy, make a lot of money, nobody dies, and very, very, very difficult to catch using your traditional firewalls and antiviruses. So, but again, social engineering and phishing remains the weapon of choice for cybercrime. Now, so how does it really work? How does a typical social engineering attack work? Typically, like how we've seen this movies, Hollywood movies, and you see basically how intelligence agencies infiltrate their targets. First, get as much information off the target as possible. Ensure that what could be the modus operandi to get in. It could be a weakness in the organization's personnel. It could be the help desk, tech support, reception, admin support, etc. Now look at it. It's always a peripheral activities. It's never the core activities, the peripheral activities that gets targeted for entering into the system, and then finally the attack in itself. We'll get into these, each one of them. Now, the primary open source, it could be dumpster diving, that is using the paper that you've discarded, web pages, ex-employees giving information, contractors, vendors, partners. There's a lot of information flowing outside. Most of the companies outsource their operations, at least in part, and that's where the information can be used by these hackers, these nefarious actors. Common SE attacks, one would be the first thing that happens is the ego attacks. That is, a call comes in, and of course, the attacker appeals to the vanity. Okay, I understand that you're doing a very high job, very high critical job, and I need you to help me with something like this. I'm calling from the help desk, or I'm calling from your manager's office, or from the CEO's office, and I need your help. Or if you look at the ego part, well, you can say a call comes to the help desk and says, let's assume your CEO's name is Michael, and so suddenly you get a call. I'm calling from the office of your CEO, Mr. Michael, and there is some serious issue happening on the systems, and you've been asked to help. So of course you'd be more than willing to help, because it's a CEO asking for it, and you were not really sure that your CEO even knows that you exist. And suddenly, and out of the blue, a call comes telling you that CEO wants your support. So it's basically the vanity or the ego of the system that is targeted at. And if there is somebody who sends us frustrated with the current job, which is most of the working staff, so in that case, those becomes a lucrative target. Now, more often than not, the victim wants to prove that they know the system that they're working on. So it will always be an open-ended question that would be asked in the sense of the attacker would simply ask like, okay, I'm sure that you'd be aware how to log on to the system, or I'm sure that your manager is not there, but probably you'd be aware of how the system access is being done. We are just here to help you access the data. Or it could be that, okay, I'm calling from the help desk and we are trying to retrieve the MIS data of the company and I'm not able to find it. I'm sure that you know, being on the job for like 20 years. So typically, see, people would like to show how smart they are. And more often than not, it's also the attacker pretending to be a law enforcement. So they feel honored to be helping. So it could be like, okay, I'm calling from, you know, the CERT organization, or it could be the Department of Defense, or the, you know, the intelligence wing of the army, and okay, we got some information on somebody within the company that there is something going wrong, and we uh, solicit your support in this, and they'll be more than, you know, happy or willing to help out, so-called. And then the sympathy attack. And the attacker pretends to be a fellow employee, like you see, okay, see, I've joined the job new and I'm really not sure why this thing is happening. So can you please help me out? You know, stuff like that, you know, or stuff like, okay, just joined this job like a few days back, and my boss has asked me to interact with you and get those reports out, but really don't know the process. Can you help me? It has to go by the end of day, and I just have like 1 hour to go now. So again, with a general, you know, joke, something like, oh, you know, Mr. Michael, how while he gets, in case it's not delivered on time, I would really appreciate, I need the job, I can't afford to get fired again. And when you hear something like that, of course, the inbound capacity, the inert capacity of a human being to help comes forth. And again, do not forget that attackers usually shop around. After they have tried, doesn't work, they just move on instead of wasting time on one person, unless it's a spear phishing attack, which is much more organized. We'll come to that. And again, elicitation, it's like more like an interview process. So conversational style, oh, how are you doing today? I just called to check how are things. We are getting some bleeps on the SIEM, and probably there's some wrong with the DLP, and it's raising concerns on the data that is there on your system. It's showing that it's been sent out. Can you help me out with something? So, you know, stuff like that. So it's easygoing, open-ended, nobody suspects a thing, and the job gets done. So that's where phishing and social engineering is emerging as the #1 methodology of hackers to get at the data. Now, why does it happen? Again, a natural tendency towards self-effacement, correct or advise, or prove somebody wrong or right and stuff, or basically to gossip. Oh, you know what happened? This is what the data was kept there, and you know, everybody can access it and stuff like that. So the data is there, and to show off professionally, especially those people with the lower self-esteem or frustrated with their job, just somebody handing them a straw is good enough to keep them happy. The defense framework, this is what I'm sure that most of you would be interested in. Defense is basically at 4 levels. 3 is the core, where I'd say the people, process, technology. That's how systems are managed. Effective policies, required staff knowledge and skill development. That's the #1 requirement that is needed to tackle any sort of social engineering attacks. And managed process. Now, security is not just about products, putting a firewall, putting an IDS, putting a APT, or putting an antivirus in place. There has to be a good synergy of policy, technology, and a support structure. So again, technology is needed. Without it, really can't do much. No matter how good are your policies and people are smart, you still need technology. But again, if the people are not in sync or synergizing with the technology, it's all a waste. And again, you need to have a very efficient, effective organization structure with a support staff to you know, reach out to people to answer queries, and basically ensuring that the support desk phone doesn't just keep ringing with nobody to answer. And goes without saying, in case you are dealing with confidential stuff, don't overdo it. What I mean by that, don't make a big show that you are doing something or handling some very, very sensitive data. You're basically painting a bull's eye on you. And that's why in most of the companies where social engineering or spear phishing has been successful, it is basically people who have a lower self-esteem and therefore want to show off. So if you're a manager, pick your people whom you want to trust with sensitive operations or sensitive data. And again, goes without saying, I heard a nice thing like many years back, never put $1,000 fence around a $500 horse. So your protection controls has to be commensurate with the potential of losses and in case there is a loss. So ensure that you don't swing from one end to the other and all. You have something right in between, which takes care of your major threat levels and gives you a mitigation for specific threats and not just anything and everything most of the time. Otherwise, you'll just be managing compliance. So get practical in that. That's what I'm trying to say. Again, from the operational vulnerabilities, the procedures in practice, many things. See, the sales and marketing staff in many companies, along with the technical staff, seems to be a very lucrative department to target by hackers. The reason being, the tech people would have at least some tech sense, but here the marketing people, the sales people are under so much pressure and with the lack of technical expertise, they become a much more lucrative target for the hackers. Again, there could be public relation people, there could be help wanted ads, which is used again by hackers or attackers to gather information about your company. It could be something like taking the work home, so that bypasses all your organization's do's and don'ts, and there could be somebody's son working and playing some game on the laptop. And again, human weakness without training becomes the #1 bullseye for your company. Countermeasures. Okay, a quick show of hands. How many companies of you guys, like there's quite a few people at this time going through this webinar. How many of you have actually attended a regular awareness training program on information security? Not the same content every time, but new content with new data landscape, more with a better IT landscape. So a quick show of hands. Again, I'm not going to report anything. We are not storing all the names who said what. So I just need to know the audience layout over here. All right. So okay, that's good, but really not good enough. So on an average, I should say like 10-15% of the attendees at this time have been through awareness training on a regular basis of content which is not repetitive in nature. Of course, classifying of information so that you ensure that you're not putting a $1,000 fence around a $500 horse. So based on your data, ensure that the people are trained and technology is put and processes are in place against phishing and social engineering. Have a rewards program in case somebody's the first thing that you need to do is need to have a robust social engineering process, detection process within your organization, so that, and then reward employees who are able to respond in a mature manner and able to protect organizational requirements, organizational objectives. Callbacks, ensure that there are callbacks before disclosing sensitive information. That we've seen in some very mature banks, that is, they just call back on the authorized number before they disclose anything. This is in addition to asking them for some information. So the bank does verification checks and then calls back the person on the registered number. Now, removing personal identifiers from access badges. Okay, access badges, try not to have your security level clearance and your designation and your mobile numbers and your email address. That is nonsense. Don't do all those personal identifiers on the access badge. In case those access badges are lost, the person who finds it knows that he has got a gold mine in his or her hands. So take care of that. Review of corporate releases. Again, not everything is marketing. I would always suggest that run this through IT, run this through the CISO to ensure that data in the corporate releases are not, hampering or compromising data security. Something like, okay, we have upgraded our data center, or we have moved to the cloud on Azure with a platform as a service, and we are having 20 instances all with network appliance based firewall. Now the corporate release may say that, but that's a huge amount of confidential information that has gone out. So take care of that. The next thing, phishing, spear phishing. And this is much more specific. In social engineering, it is something like carpet bombing, as I say, but in spear phishing, it is very specific. Okay, look at this. As per the malware review, amount of phishing mails containing a form of ransomware grew to 97.25. Can you believe that? Up from 92% of Q1 of 2016. Look at this. This is a bit funny, so I put it. 78% of people claim to be aware of the risk of unknown links in the emails, and yet they click anyway. Why do they do that? I'm sure that even you would have done that sometime, or personally speaking, me on those very rare occasions where I think that I may want to bite the bullet and take the risk. But again, the thought process that happens is that, oh, I'm okay, I'm very smart, and my laptop is anyway not owned by me, it's by the company, and stuff like that. So that's what causes the 78%. 78%, can you believe this? Means 4 out of every 5 people would click on a link even though they know it's not the right thing to do. That is sad. That's really sad. 29% of security breaches involve social tactics such as phishing. So 1/3 of all security tactics, look at it this way, is phishing. Can you believe that? 1/3, almost 1/3 that is phishing. Phishing again is the most used social tactics, that is on social media and otherwise, 71%. So phishing is used. Spear phishing. Look at this, 91% of targeted attacks use spear phishing emails, not calls, not SMSs, no WhatsApp messages, they use email. Simple, easy to use, and can be sent out in a go, and you can send it out to maybe 100,000 people, and I'm sure that out of 100,000 people, at least 100 would click on it. So that's very good, and from maybe 20 of them make a sale, you still end up with of sale of say $50, you still end up with $1,000 for basically doing nothing. A quick example, let me see how it is. Look at this. This is a very good example of phishing email because it's very specific. Look at this. It is very specific. Mostly the social engineering mails are typical open-ended mails where you know that this is nonsense. It comes like, dear valued banking customer. So I know that, okay, it could be some general marketing or somebody is trying to spam me. The reason being, people like to be addressed in a personal manner. So if you put it down in that way, they would typically, take up the bait. And again, see, look over here, New York Madison Avenue branch to your account ending with XXX2435. So they have some personal details about you. Very, very specific. So in case you even have a doubt of that it's a phishing email, you'd be asking a question, why me? And how did they get my card number? So probably they are right. And that's what happens. Okay, quick thing. Okay. You think this is a good URL? You think, okay, why don't you try to do this? Let me know, is this a valid site or not? You have like 20 seconds. I repeat, this is a screen grab of a social engineering attack. You tell me whether it is good site or bad site. Okay, okay. Except to the exception of a few, most of you got it right. It may show over here as usbank.com, but this is a subdomain. The primary domain is srvc.com. So many people who are not really aware would just go with usbank.com, and again, there is no HTTPS. A bank would always have HTTPS for internet banking. So I don't see HTTPS, I don't see the log, so I can assume that it's a hacking site. Compare it with this HTTPS usbank.com. So most probably this is like a legit site, unless the site has been hacked in the background and the hacker has introduced malware onto the systems. A quick overview of phishing. Typically, most of the time, 90% I would say it's always email spoofing. Somebody sending a mail in somebody else's name. Now, it is not just about money. It could be usernames, passwords, credit card details. It could be photographs, so many other things. That could be some company documentation for as a part of industrial espionage is possible. Now, again, it presents a fake site that has almost the same look and feel of the original. It may pick up some information about you from your Facebook pages, from whom you have been saying what, and it can also be achieved by installing a malware onto the system. So it's not just asking for information, even getting access to the system to install a malware can be called as phishing. Now look at this. According to the third Microsoft Computing Safer Index released in Feb 2004, worldwide impact is 2004. Nowadays it must have gone up like 7 billion or something like that. Could be as high as $5 billion. And surprisingly, most of the companies don't really engage into appropriate, measurable, and straightforward training awareness session for their personnel. There is spear phishing, very specific. Look at this. This technique is by far the most successful, accounting for 91% of the attacks. So the more the personalized, the more the chances of it being taken as a legitimate email comes into place. I'm sure that you'd be much more willing to have a click on email that contains all this data in other than an email which just contains generic data and spelling mistakes. Now again, there is a clone phishing. Again, the content gets cloned, but you know, like more like a man in the middle attack. The data gets replaced with infected malware-based scene to get access to the systems in your backend. And there is whaling. Now whaling. What do you think? It's basically phishing attacks directed at the senior management, the senior high-profile targets within the businesses. Again, for the senior level people, the emails are meticulously written, very specific, very long, just the way they want to read it, and of course, the solicitation for purchasing some software, hardware, or whatever be the case can be followed up over there. Now, what phishing is not? Many people refer to it as fraud, so that's the reason I put it over here. It's not really, it's different from fraud. The reason being, okay, there is social engineering involved, there is automation, there is electronic communication, there is impersonation. So in a very generic manner, you may still say as fraud, but technically speaking, it is not really a fraud. And how exactly do you think it gets pulled off? There is link manipulation. This is by far the most easiest way by which it gets done. That is, look at this. Instead of Citibank, somebody has written Citi Hank. Now, this may or may not be a legit site, but what if it is Citibank only, but instead of an I put E, or I put CITII, or a CILI. You know, so people read it in a hurry and they can forget that they are entering into a hacker site. Then there are subdomains. So as we saw earlier, there is SRVC, so you may enter Gopal Krishna, but after that, whatever is there changes with it. So it could be your Gopal Krishna company.srvc.com. Now there is HTML anchor tag manipulation too, that is possible. Again, it could be, look at this. There is indiatimes.com, and then of course there is, what they have done is, for some who knows how to read HTML, you can see that they have put India Times, but it actually goes to this site that is written over here. So on the website, on the web page, it will be showing as India Times, but actually it is going to this site. So all those the tag manipulation comes into place, and again a homograph. So you may say that okay, I click here, but it still goes here, and I can see it in the URL window that it is not showing India Times, but it is showing as badhacker.com. But just think about it. Now that is just passé, that's old. Now using various what to say JavaScripts and JScript programs, it is very well possible that they even put image on it on the URL tag, or they change the URL in the window, so it's actually going to bad hacker, but it still shows India Times. The other thing is that this is now really coming up very well, that is they may use, since internet has to support different languages, so it ends up even approving or using characters which are similar to English characters with minor variations. So hacker may simply buy those. So look at this. The Cyrillic E can be used in the place of an English E. So it's very well possible that such manipulations are done. There is filter evasion. Now, since your filters or your antiviruses can basically read the mails and come to know that it's a phishing mail, they basically start using images on the hope that the antivirus will not be able to catch it. But again, antiviruses are improving now, but it is not really perfect. So after the user has clicked on a link, the website is exactly the same as the one where they have which they are trying to masquerade as. And again, hackers have used cross-site scripting against well-known payment sites to force user to enter his or her login credentials. Now there are a lot of kits also available in the market. Even this very old phishing kit is available. There is much more advanced that has come now, but even this still works. And there is flashing. Now, it's not FLA, but okay, it uses FLASH, which I mean by the flash technology. So what people do is that, what these hackers do is that, since text can be read, images can be read, they put a flash-based object which cannot be read directly by programs, and are adequately sandboxed or separated. Now there are open and covert methods of redirect also. Now look at this. URL redirection is a productive functionality. Of course, for those who have done any sort of web page development would know that. That helps a web page to redirect a page request to another page. However, the same can be exploited if validation is not done when it redirects the user to a page as per user input. Using basically buffer overflows and other techniques, it can get done. So that's like an overt open redirect. So he clicks on this, it actually goes over here. There is a phishing again, which is more like a phone phishing. It's not really that much in use, because emails are much more faster and much more productive. And with phishing, there is a possibility of you getting caught. So they basically use such mobile or such online systems to place even the phone calls. And what does the information flow look like? 3 components. There is a mail sender, there is a collector, and there is a cacher. Mail sender, again, it could be using automated systems available cheaply on the internet. So they use that to send the mails. And there is again a collector, which is collecting the sensitive information from those who are stupid enough to click on it or do something about it. And of course, the cacher, who figures out and gets the money using those information. Now, this is a single screen summarization of what we have seen so far. That is how the planning takes place, different strategies of planning, setup, attack, collection, fraud, and post-attack, how it works. You may just spend some time on just this slide, and you will really learn quite a bit. So what are the ways out? There is an anti-phishing community and many more other, and there is a fish tank, which is like an anti-phishing site. You can put your website over there, the website that you have some where you're suspecting it to be a phishing website. For example, let me tell you, we got a mail a few months back, and that mail was from some company in Nigeria, Africa something, and that guy was saying that there are some good contracts over here and whether we would like to come and look into it. Of course, we are looking at expanding, but then something was not really sounding right, and um, he said he's got some contracts with some banks over there, and he wants some partners from India to help them execute the project. They'll arrange for all the tickets and the money and stuff like that, and then we played it around a bit. I played it around a bit just to see how far he goes with it. And we asked them some more pointed questions, and they realized that okay, we are on to them, and they just ran away. But just look at it this way: they're not really asking for money upfront. They're expecting us to tag along with them, and then maybe say that okay, we want to buy the ticket for you, but we're running short of cash or something like that, and ask us to transfer the money for them. Look at this: the APWG, anti-phishing working group. In Fish Tank, you can even put your site and see how it is going. You can even, in some of these sites, you can even put the content of the mails, and the software will identify for you whether it's a genuine mail or it is a phishing attack. And as a solution, of course, there are many solutions out there, but four I can say from your organizational perspective, I would say brand monitoring, that is comes as a part of threat intelligence, where the entire internet is crawled for clones which are nothing but the phishing pages, and then they are blacklisted as required. Behavior detection, again, what happens is that the software studies the behavior pattern of people and creates its own patterns for what could be expected or not expected from these people. And security event monitoring, again, could not be a big thing, but if some user is accessing some systems because of some phishing attack or social engineering, then at least you have some alerting mechanism in the backend, and have a very strong authentication system in place using at least more than one factor authentication to ensure that all is not lost. Then there is a client-based systems. Nowadays, most of this endpoint systems, it could be Kaspersky or McAfee and all, have most of the systems in place. It could be either email analysis or blacklisting, or it could be information flow, similarity of layouts. It just checks and alerts the user to that this particular site you're visiting is a phishing site. Of course, I can give you a listing of which we have seen as effective, software to deal with on the server and the client, but I cannot do that openly because they're vendor neutral. And of course, you can write to me and I can write back to you, but again, we are not selling you any products. We are totally vendor neutral. But since you are there with me on this webinar, I'll be more than happy to respond back to you in an agnostic manner as much as possible. Okay, that brings me to the end, and I've overshot the time. Okay, I can see a few questions, but I really cannot take it up at this moment. And so far, we have done 7 highly successful webinars, and we've got the upcoming, which is really anticipated. It was actually requested by a few people, a few clients, friends who have been attending a webinar since a long time, and on PCI DSS scoping and segmentation. Now, as you know, that's a very hot topic, volatile topic. No matter what version you are using, scoping out your PCI DSS environment becomes like a top-notch priority for you. And of course, how do you achieve optimal segmentation within a network? So we'll be looking this up on September 28th. That is just 1 month down the line, like slightly more. But do sign up, and I look forward to meeting you then. And at the end of this webinar, that you may receive a small survey email. And I really request you to please respond on that. And I'm really short on time. I can see the questions that have been popped up over here, and I promise you that as always I will be responding. You still have time to punch in a question if you have, and I will. Again, please do complete the survey at the end and leave your comments. These are my coordinates in case you want to write to us, and our past webinars are there online. You can go up to this YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Vista InfoSec official, or you can just do a search in YouTube Vista InfoSec, and you'll get a page. So do subscribe, do share the videos and your comments, and we really look forward to seeing you again. Thank you and have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.